Welcome to Leading Questions, where we talk about the pivots, the leaps, and the messy middle of change. I'm your host, Susie Gidseg, a longtime social and content leader who is also in the middle of a big pivot myself. This season is about the people who are brave enough to bet on themselves, to leave comfort for possibility, to rebuild after disruption, and to find new meaning in what's next. Because sometimes the best way to lead is to start by asking a better question. So today's guest is Kara Miller. Hello, Kara.
Hi.
Kara is a former corporate leader. We worked at the same company. She spent 25 years in the same world, only to rediscover herself through reinvention, which we're going to talk about today. After a layoff, which we all know too well on this podcast, she turned a pause into purpose, founding her own business that blends technology, education, and creativity to help others find joy again in their lives. Her story is one of courage, color, and coming back to herself. So a lot to get into today with Kara. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited about this conversation.
Me too. So let's jump into it, my friend. The first thing that I loved about your story is that it starts not with a leap, but with a pause. When you think about that time in your life, going through that layoff after 25 years, what was it like for you? What stands out looking back in time?
So, uh, I was at the company for 25 years. I started right out of college. And so that moment in time was the first time that I had ever paused outside of a couple 3-week vacations every once in a while. Um, for the first time in my adult life, I didn't have email to check or meetings to attend or strategies to create or offices to drive into. It was a huge pause. And yeah, so it was the first time completely.
I remember that as well for myself. I was like, wow, my phone is here, but I don't need to pick it up to look at something while I'm driving or in the grocery store. Things aren't ringing off the hook. What's going on? My body just didn't know what to do. And it sounds like you went through something similar.
Yes. I I thankfully had a few conversations with friends and they would tell me, go watch a show, like, and be okay with that. But I did also have a friend that said, take the time that you need and also what do you want to do with that time? So, when you come to the end of this pause, is there anything you want to have accomplished? And that was asked very early on. And so I was like, I don't have that thing right now, but it was definitely a good message to have in the back of my head. What could I still do with that that would be meaningful for me?
I think that's such a good conversation to have with your friend. I wish someone told me the same thing.
Yeah.
Or if they did, I probably didn't listen. But I remember when I reached out to you after seeing your new company and I was like, wow, how did you get there? And you were like, well, first I paused and I
Yeah.
spent a lot of time thinking, which we're going to get into in just a second. So before the layoff, you said you'd been a little unhappy. You couldn't really pinpoint why. Being in the same place, even though we know our roles change a lot for 25 years. What was that like for you to grapple with, like, maybe you were ready for a change, maybe you didn't wanna be there for 40 years?
Yeah. I had been in a place where the role I was performing on paper should have been my ideal. It's what I had been moving towards for probably the last 10 years or so. And so on paper, that should have been like, I have achieved this thing, and it still didn't feel right. It didn't have the personal satisfaction that I was thinking I would find when I finally got there. And so I had been trying to figure out, well, is it the role that I'm in? Is it the leadership structure or is it the company? You know, have I outgrown this, one of these pieces in some way?
So it sounds like in the back of your mind, there was an idea that there might be something next, even if it wasn't the thing you were choosing for yourself at that moment in time. What was the pause like for you? What was your thinking pattern like while you were sort of decompressing from corporate life?
Well, so I have 3 kids, and the first question they asked, of course, was, "Are we still going on our spring break trip?" We had plans to go to Ireland with my parents over spring break, and that was gonna be roughly 6 weeks after this occurred. And I kind of set a line in the sand where that was gonna be the length of my pause, my intentional pause. I didn't wanna look at anything, I didn't want to make myself available for anything during that time because I just wanted to focus on getting to spring break and giving myself the opportunity to just sit and not necessarily think about what I wanted to do next. I know that that's a very much a privilege to be able to do that. One of the first things was just deciding that I was gonna pause at least until after spring break.
I'll say to anyone listening, this is probably the best advice you're gonna get if you're going through a layoff or going through a transition. This was advice I did get, and I ignored both times. And I said, "Who me? I don't need a pause. Let's go." And I think the fact that I didn't pause always came back to bite me a little bit. You need rest, you need decompression, you need some time. Maybe you need a trip to Ireland. You need things to take you back to your baseline, and then you can figure out what you want to do next. So what was that like for you after the pause?
So, one of the things that I did continue to do was reconnect with people, maintain connections, lunches, coffee, um, walks, just to make sure that it wasn't just me sitting in my home by myself, you know? And so I maintained a lot of that. And of course, I have several friends that were wanting to help, and so they kept suggesting, and I was like, "Okay, yeah, but let's wait until after spring break, like, give me a few weeks
Yeah.
and let's start talking about those things." And so but maintaining that allowed those conversations to at least keep coming up periodically. And so after the pause, I, um, just started thinking, what do I want to do next? Because I am going to need to make that decision eventually. I'm not at a place just yet where I can retire. So, what do I want to do with this time now? Because probably 10-ish years is what I've really, that'll get my kids out of school. And I was like, I need to think of something else. Nothing sounded like the right thing to do. It all sounded like the same thing I had done before. So that was what the pause started transitioning into. Okay, what do I wanna do? That doesn't sound right. What do I wanna do? That could work, but it just didn't hit in the way that I wanted it to.
And I think for many people, you leave and you say, well, okay, let me do the thing I was doing before. You were trying on ideas. How did you get to an idea that felt like you and felt like the next step you wanted to take?
So I was actually going to a lunch with a friend. He had been talking to me about a position that we could create for me. And that sounded awesome because it was going to be something that I could build, right? And it was building a service for the company he worked at so that I could take that service, build it out, and then sell it to other companies. And that was probably the closest to what sounded exciting at the time. And on my way to this lunch, I was thinking through, okay, so I'm going to have to start going into the office now. What's that going to look like? I'm going to need to travel because these companies are not going to be where I'm located. And so it's a consulting firm. And so I'm going to need to travel to other client sites. And I've got these 3 kids that are in sports and, you know, doing all the things. And they're in 3 different schools, elementary, middle, and high school. And so how am I going to do this? I, and again, this is just my drive there. And I said, I think I'm going to need to hire someone. I was told in the past that as you move up and you need to lean in more at work, you've got to step back at home a little bit. So hire the help that you need in order to be successful, right? Places. Because work life balance, it's a thing, but it's not what we think initially is that that balance has to come only from us. And really, that balance is what can I take? What can my partner take? What can someone else take in order for me to be successful?
That is putting it perfectly. I've never heard it put like that, Kara, and I love it. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Finding the balance. It doesn't just exist on its own.
So I said, okay, I'm going to have to hire someone. All right, I can do that. Do I know what I would have them do? Yes, they would probably be helping me with meal planning and helping me figure out logistics with kids and all of those things. And then I thought, do I know who I would hire? No,
Mm.
but I wish it could be me.
Oh, this is a productive car ride.
This was a very productive car ride. The lunch was not as productive for my friend because I sat there going, I've got this idea. Like, this is what's going through my head right now. And if I if I do this, I'm gonna have to hire this. But what if it was me that did that thing? So we kind of brainstormed through our lunch, like, what could that even look like? Thankfully, again, good friend, he
Yeah.
pivoted towards this conversation that I really needed to have at that moment in time.
And it sounds like that lit you up. So the leading question you asked me that you were grappling with at that moment was, what if you built a way to help your community through education, enablement, and technology? So tell me what you decided to build.
So I decided to build a business. It's called My Home COO, and it is the chief operations for your home life. So you have all this support at work, and then you have a second job at home, sometimes a third job at home. And how can you do those operations differently? One of the things I wrote down at one point is my ideal client is a female, likely businesswoman. She's really into her career, moving up, trying to move up more. And she wants to be able to juggle all these things and is not able to. And so, how can I support her? I've been building guides and I have a blog where I'm trying to educate and then actually supporting people. A lot of it is also personal assistance. So coming in and helping this busy executive declutter her office so that she has a more calm mind when she's on her conference calls and she's not looking to the side thinking, hopefully they don't see this mess. Or it's, enabling the woman who wants to host the networking events. She wants to host her game nights, but she also loves to cook with her daughters. And she's trying to move up in her company and needs the support to be able to continue to do all these things.
I love it because it's almost like rebranding a different way to be a person in the world and what is okay to ask for help. I know when I started moving up in my career, I had that conversation too. And I was like, wow, there's things that I think I should probably outsource. A, because I'm not particularly good at them. Someone else is way better at them. But B, because my time is being taken in another place. I'm choosing to give my time at the time to my job. And it
Yeah.
meant that I didn't have time to put into some of the other things. And there was some guilt, right? I don't even have kids. There was guilt about like, well, why can't I do it all? Why can't I find 20 more hours in the day? What does it mean for me if I ask for assistance? And I think this is a rebranding of all of that.
Mhm.
It's impossible to do everything, and it is a wonderful gift to give yourself to ask for support, and you should. When you decided this is going to be your new path, what was the first decision that made My Home COO real for you?
You can't do anything until you have a name.
Very true.
I was, thinking about what it could be and writing a ton of notes. And when I decided to start clicking into it a little bit more, I had to come up with a name. And that's what made it real. And everything just shot forward after that. I knew I wanted it to be tied to business in a way because that's my background. That's what I know. That's the type of people that I know the best. And so that's kind of why I stuck with the chief operations officer piece. But yeah, it was the date that I chose the name and it was June 24th. And roughly 2 months after the initial idea.
And it's funny because I know when we've talked, you're like, are things moving fast enough? And I'm like, you are moving so fast. It is incredible. And yeah, 2 months from an idea to a name. to the birth of a new invention is incredible.
It was a few months later when I launched, when I told people, "This is what I'm doing."
How do you feel that the past 25 years of working in corporate prepared you for becoming an entrepreneur?
Previous company helped me get my MBA. So I have that background. I took a couple entrepreneurship classes. I took extra marketing classes that, when I had opportunities for electives, those are the things that I chose to beef that up a little bit. So those things that I chose 15, 20 years ago
Wow.
um, ended up helping me quite a bit. I moved around a lot within the company, but my background is really technology. And so I have an IT background. I was a software developer for a short time. I did a lot of testing and software testing. And so I was able to build my website on my own. And I was able to build in some pieces to enable me and my clients that I wouldn't have been able to do if I didn't have that background, or it would have been a lot harder. I probably would have had to hire it out. And so that was a good boost of confidence that piece I don't have to worry about.
It's also like the knowing that wherever you go, everything you've done comes with you. Like that was
Ugh,
something I sort of realized after this last layoff that, oh yeah, I still have these
all of that.
15, 20 years of different jobs and roles and experiences. And I'm just like putting it on my back and taking it with me. And that you're going all the way back to when you're a software developer and it's still there with you in your day to day. And that's incredible.
One of the things I was looking at recently, I scrolled a little further in LinkedIn on my own profile than I had in a while, and when I look back at it, you know how people can write recommendations, right? Nearly all of the recommendations are related to Kara knows how to come in and see a situation and make it simple. She knows how to take a chaotic piece and make it calm. And, working with a variety of people to figure out what their needs are and to address that. And it made me realize that you're absolutely right. All those things that you've learned come with you into whatever phase you take on next. And I don't know that I would have thought as much about it if I had read those things 6 months ago, but it was a good moment because, you know, you get concerned, confused. I don't know sales. That is one thing that I haven't done, and so that has been a little hard. But seeing that helped me just remember that, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I have really built over time. I'm the right person to do this. I just have to figure out how to get it into the right people's hands and communicate it to the right people.
It's so amazing, like, the things people see in us, maybe even before we see them in ourselves. Like, I do go back to those LinkedIn recommendations. They're some of my favorite things, and I love seeing what were people saying about me in my earliest jobs, and a lot of times it is that same through line that's there no matter what you're doing, who you're working with, it's just who you are and what you naturally bring to the table. Yeah, it's a good reminder because there are always things that are not our absolute strengths, but there's so many things that you bring to the table that everyone has seen for so many years.
Yeah.
Okay, slight pivot here. So, something that you wrote when you submitted to be on the podcast was that for a while in your life, your creative side went quiet. But you said in there you'd been a cookie decorator, a seamstress, a piano player, a cross stitcher, and I think there were like four or five others.
I think the one that surprises people the most is the seamstress. Um, the seamstress thing came along because, gosh, almost 14 years ago now, I had my first daughter. Um, the dresses and things were so cute, and I had become a part of this group of women that would run away for a long weekend every once in a while, and they would bring whatever thing they wanted to work on. And the place that we would go to was a 70-ish-year-old woman and her husband that hosted this home, and they would ring a bell whenever food was ready, and you just got to come in and sit in your pajamas the whole time if you wanted to and
Delightful.
do. So people would do quilting or scrapbooking or grade papers the whole weekend if they were teachers. Like, it didn't matter what you brought. So I got a hold of a sewing machine and brought it, and they taught me how to sew.
I love it. And so it feels like creativity is interjecting its way into how you're building your company in some way, right? How does that show up for you?
So the first thing was the website. I had to come up with what my brand looked like. Like, what are the colors that I'm gonna use? What is the imagery? What is the font? And those things were so much fun. I remember I spent a full weekend, one weekend, just putting together this little brand package because I knew that I needed that in order to build the website or any collateral, you know? And then it has evolved into learning Canva and how do I create these posts that then go on social media. Um, so that's a lot of how it's been. And then here lately, it's been what do my clients need? And so that's what I've been creating lately is these documents that people can use to make their lives easier.
Love that. It's so interesting. Like I had to learn a lot about Canva too. And it's funny, like even running social media teams, my teams were amazing at Canva and I was like junior level. And one thing that I experimented with, just like you, is when I was building this podcast, I was like, okay, I need bumpers. I need a design. I need music. I've taught myself a lot just experimenting. And sometimes it's a little hard. Sometimes it's really exciting, but you get to the end result and you're like, I figured it out. I did
I
that.
created that.
It's a lot of joy in that
I built
creativity.
that.
At this period, do you feel more authentically yourself? Do you feel like this is what you meant to be doing?
I think that this is truly what I'm supposed to be doing. I've always had this desire to help people. I volunteer a lot. I work with different organizations with my time and talent. It's always been part of me to make sure that I'm helping out something. And so it just makes complete sense that the job that I've created for myself and this business that I've created is designed to help women walk through life easier, from a more calm state to where they can do the things that they want to do. And it's been very rewarding, even a couple months in, seeing the impact that I've been able to make.
So, one question that I didn't have on my list, but has come up a few times in our conversation is around community. It feels like you have this really incredible community that has been both a gut check for you and cheering you on and seeing opportunities for you. What has that community been like for you? And how do you feel like it's played into this discovery period for yourself?
My community has always been what I've leaned on. My friends and family and colleagues. And early on, it was just, processing during the pause. Mentioned before that I kept up the conversations. And one of the people that I leaned in very early on with was a friend from grad school. And we do a Tuesday morning walk and talk. She's in Arizona. She's 2 hours to 1 hour ahead of me. And after I get kids dropped off, I go to a trail. She goes walking outside her apartment. And then we talk for at least an hour every Tuesday morning. And initially, it was just being there for me because she had that time available. We needed to get out and exercise, and she had been laid off before. So she walked with me through that, and we're 10 months later. And then I have tapped into different people that I was either very good friends with or part of my community in the past. You're definitely one of them. I've got a few people that are doing this thing also that have been supportive. Yeah. And I don't think it would have happened and in the way it would have happened if I hadn't had that support because each person has come in and brought their own thing. You're not ever able to lean on one person for everything, and that would be too much to ask of anyone. But I've just really leaned into my community, and it has been critical in making this what it is. and making sure that I don't just, become a sad mess.
None of us want that for ourselves either,
No.
and I think that is, like, because I 'cause I'm probably a relentless optimist to a fault, and I do look back over periods post layoff and I think, "Wow, but think about who I reconnected with," or
Yeah,
relationships that got a lot deeper than they were at the beginning, or it's not really about networking, it's just about leaning into the relationships that are already there, nurturing them, and then figuring out how you can mutually help each other.
I love how you call it community
Yeah,
because I think that I feel like that is a good, warm description of what you need at any given time, whether it's a new parent or young adult fresh out of college or going through these transitions. Your community evolves completely over time. But yeah, I think that that's totally important.
what advice would you give to someone who is considering making a pivot like you did?
I think that pause is so important. I really do. Not everyone has the luxury of pausing, but if you find yourself in a place where um, you are without a job for a while, sit and think for just a little bit about what makes you you, what you're really good at, and what people come to you for. People naturally would come to me and ask for help on different things or how do you get that done? So giving yourself the opportunity to sit and pause, even if it's for a week before you go and just dive into the same thing again. Maybe that change that was forced upon you was because you need to be doing something different.
Beautiful.